everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thanks for joining me today. I'm recording this on a Tuesday because I just got a call from the gentleman who's going to be installing a whole home generator, and they want to do it tomorrow, so they'll be moving around and banging things around, I imagine. So I thought I would record this early, not that it matters to you, I guess, except that it was kind of a whoops, hurry up, we'll do this a day early thing. So we're back to talking about circles, and today I want to piece a circle rather than doing an applique. And to do that, I need circles of two different sizes, and they need to be 1 inch difference in their diameter. So this is a 5.5 inch circle, and this is a 6.5 inch circle. One of them is going to be the hole, and one of them is going to be the outside rim. Now, it is counterintuitive to me, so I always have to double check myself. But let's start with the fabrics here. I am using these two fabrics. I sort of have a project in mind. I'm not sure that I'll end up using this for that project, but these are two fabrics from a fat quarter bundle I bought of Jane Sassaman's hand-dyed cotton collection. And the camera doesn't seem to really be doing it justice. This is a very bright teal kind of color that it looks a little blue here on the camera, but here it is a greener, brighter blue. And then also this green. I love hand-dyed cottons because they aren't a uniform color. Sometimes I want a uniform color throughout, but these are not a uniform color. You can see some different lines and variations. Sometimes the color's a little darker, sometimes it's a little lighter. On this green, you probably can't tell the difference in the camera, but one side has got more of a green tint to it, and the other side more of a yellow. So I just think it's a lovely, rich, earthy looking kind of effect that I really like. So I am going to be piecing the circle into this piece of fabric, and I'm going to use this for the circle. Now, the counterintuitive thing is that the circle that I'm going to cut here, so I'm going to be piecing a blue circle into this has to be the smaller circle. And then this piece, which is going to be pieced in, has to be the larger circle. It's a little bit like, I guess, if you have done garment sewing, if you're putting in the sleeve into an armhole, or doing the crotch in a pair of trousers. It seems like if you take a deeper seam, just logically from sewing, we think that's going to make it shorter, but in fact it's the opposite. So I kind of think of it this way: it's the opposite of what I think it should be. So I am going to draw these circles. First of all, this is my base piece that I'm going to be piecing into. That's the smaller circle, and then I will cut the blue circle out to be pieced into here. Now, I guess if you think of it as seam allowance take up. So this circle is going to have, it's actually going to be stitched outside this circle. So this is going to be the edge, but the 1/4 inch seam allowance actually makes it a little larger. And this, the seam allowance is coming from here, so it's actually going to be a little smaller. And you put all those seam allowances together, and it's a difference of 1 inch in the diameters. So I have these circles that I use for machine quilting on my long arm. This is from a set designed by Amanda Murphy called Good Measure. And then this is a Pro Circle 8 from Quilter's Groove. However, if you don't happen to have a handy set of circles of different sizes, you can of course use a compass, such as I have here, and draw a circle, or draw use anything else for a circle. I would recommend that you do a pretty good sized circle, at least for the first time you do this, because the larger the circle, of course, the gentler the curve, which if you're a little bit hesitant about doing curves or a full circle, then it will be easier for you if you do a larger circle. Now, if you do, I have drawn a circle here with my compass. There are a couple of ways you could approach it. One is to then take a ruler and line up the half-inch mark. Remember, it's to be a full inch larger, which means you need a half-inch all the way around. So you can then make a tick mark at the edge here and just keep moving around. And the more tick marks that you make, the more accurate your circle is going to be and the easier your circle is going to be. It's tedious, but it will work. So you can't really see those marks very well. And then you can connect those and get a template. The other thing you can do is I've marked the center here, which is right here. I guess I should have done this in pen instead of pencil. So now I can put now that I've made a half-inch mark over here, I can plant my center point of my compass directly in there, match up the pencil with my half-inch mark over here, and draw another circle around it so that I have the two sizes of circles that I need. Now, if you have a compass that lets you easily measure, say you set it for 5 inches and the next one you do for 6 inches, then of course you could do that as well. So if you don't have a handy set of rulers, that will work too. All right, so I am going to take this fabric, and this is the base fabric, so it is the smaller circle. And although I could do this with a rotary cutter, and maybe I would if I had a rotating mat, but I think in this case I'm going to prefer to draw around it with a pencil and then cut it with scissors, carefully with scissors. And a moment ago I had a pencil, and now I don't. Isn't that swell? All right, oh, here's a pencil. Okay, now when I go around a circle, you all probably know this, but you can't just do this and wobble all over. You have to make sure that your pencil is at the same orientation all the way around. If it's like this, then it's going to be different than if you've got it leaning into the edge. So I always try to lean it right up against the edge. And then I'm going to cut that with a pair of scissors. And then the same thing with this blue, which is the circle that I'm inserting. And this is the larger circle, to double check myself. And of course I'm making sure I have enough room around here. The seam allowance is already figured into what I'm cutting here. I'm being a little generous on my margins, but for the base block, I need to make sure that I leave room over here because I'm going to have seam allowances there. So just make sure you've got enough room around it. So I will cut those out and then I'll be back. I have my 2 circles. Kind of wild, huh? I am leaving this piece purposely larger because I think I want to piece another circle over here. So I'm leaving it larger just in case. And because I cut out that circle, I have this to be pieced into another circle. The real key to doing this is to fold both of these pieces, these circles, into quarters, because then you're just dealing with a quarter at a time, and that's easy. When I do it, this is the right side here. When I do it, I take this base and I'm going to line up these circles here, edges of the circles. We'll see how imperfect my cutting might have been. So that it's basically in half, and then I'm going to make a little, pardon the shaking, I'm going to make little finger presses there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the right sides going together and making little finger presses there. You can do pressing with the iron if it will be more clear to you. So now I have 4 quarter marks here, and they're like little valleys. The way I've creased them, they're like that. Now for this one, I want to have the right side have peaks so that they just sort of fall into each other. So let's see if I can get this right. So I am going to actually put it wrong sides together, fold it in half and finger press at the edges, and then unfold it and fold it in half the other direction. And now when I put right sides together, they are going to be, you can see that it's going to nest in like that. I took a moment to make these quarter marks. I press them with the iron because I think you'll be able to see them better. And now we are ready to start pinning this to get ready to sew. This is the right side, and I'm now going to flip it over. For some reason, this just makes more sense to me. So now the wrong side is underneath, or the right side is underneath, sorry. Let me confuse you a little bit, shall I? And now I'm going to take this piece and find the quarter mark here, one of the quarter circle marks. I didn't make that as clear as I thought I did. There it is, right there. Make that a little more clear for myself. And now I'm going to take this quarter mark and this quarter mark, and because one's a peak and one's a valley, I mean, I suppose that's kind of a minor thing, but I've just learned that that makes it easier for you to match it up more exactly. And I'm going to stick a pin in it. And the pins that I use, again, are Clover's extra fine quilting pins, because they are fine pins and they just don't distort the fabric as much as some of the thicker pins do. So that's one quarter mark. Now I'm going to go over to the opposite quarter mark, across the diameter of it, and again, right sides together. I'm going to put the peak and the valley together. If they don't go together, if one isn't a peak and one isn't a valley, then I know I'm doing something wrong. So now I've got 2 quarters. Now I'm going to go to the other quarter marks, match up the peak and the valley, and stick a pin in it. I'm not worrying about anything except those 2 points that I'm matching up. May look a little scary at this point, but it really isn't. And then again, the final quarter mark, I'll match up the peak and the valley. So now I have 4 quarters already in place, and I've marked them so I know they are the quarters. Now all I have to do is deal with a quarter of a circle at a time. I don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I've got to pin this all the way around, and what if it doesn't come out right at the other end? Then I have to pin it all over again, and it's a little daunting. But now all I have to do is worry about pinning here. And I actually do quite a few pins, especially if it's been a while since I've done a piece to circle, till I get used to it. And I find it easier, rather than trying to do it flat like this, to just let it be a circle. It's nesting in a circle. So let it kind of curve around itself. Remember, you've got lots of bias here. It's all bias, so don't be yanking on it. And I just match up the edges, stick a pin in it, and I want to make sure I'm not pinning in any pleats or folds back here. And then I just keep going around. And because I've marked the quarter circles, and I knew those were accurate, as long as I'm not tugging on it and stretching it, I know it's going to come out in the end. There shouldn't be any fullness to ease, but if there is, you can ease it a little bit. And then I just keep pinning around this quarter. And if I want to assure myself that I'm not going to have a mess at the end, I can let the, circle be a circle. Yep, that's going to fit fine. And just keep pinning. And again, as I'm doing this, I'm feeling with my finger under here to make sure that I'm not building a pleat in there anywhere. And I will check for that again as I'm sewing, but there's no point in creating one while I'm pinning. It just makes my sewing life harder. And I'll probably just do a couple more, and you see it just comes out perfectly well. And I let it be a circle and just fit inside each other here. And there's a quarter circle pinned and ready to go. Now I suppose if you do enough of these, you can probably do it without very many pins, but I like that assurance. I will just go around, I'm just doing the same thing on the other 3/4, and I'll meet you back here when we have all of those pinned. Here is the pinned circle in all its glory. Now, it's just sewing like you would for even any straight seam. Certainly a curved seam, but any straight seam, except that you want to always be checking behind, because there are naturally going to be some sort of gathering back there, and you want to make sure that when you're stitching across there, you don't have any gathering, and you can do that by feeling underneath as you come to it. Do not sew through your finger. I will say that again, do not sew through your finger. I found my machine will cut through my thumb and thumbnail just easy as you please. All right, so I also find it easier when I go to the machine sometimes if I just let it curl a little bit around it. It seems to just be easier for me. You can kind of play with it as you do it. Take your time and make sure you're doing an accurate 1/4 inch or scant 1/4 inch. When I do it, let me pull my presser foot off here. I have on my presser foot, which is probably actually not the, I could have it open toed, that might be better. But I move my needle so that it is a 1/4 inch from the edge. That's how I mark it. The key thing is that when you have your presser foot or whatever you're using, you want to make sure that you are checking for that 1/4 inch at the point where the needle is. So pretend this is my needle. It doesn't matter where it is down here or even right here. That's not where my needle is. I need the 1/4 inch to be right where my needle is. So I'm always checking at that exact spot. I tend to, when I'm sewing straight seams, to be watching down here, because then I know I'm feeding it in straight, but this is not straight. So if I'm watching down here for a 1/4 inch, that means that my needle is actually more than a 1/4 inch back where it's sewing. So I'm going to see if I can set up the camera and machine such that you can watch me do a start on this. So the camera is basically in my lap, the camera stand, and I have to try to do this working around that, so it's probably going to be a little jiggly. Sorry about that. All I'm going to do is just slide this under, and I have my needle moved over, so it isn't in the center position. It's moved over at 7.5 on my machine, but it's probably something different on yours. And so my 1/4 inch is going to be along the edge here. And I'll see if I can do this semi-accurately while I'm... So this is where my needle is, right here. And so I'm matching my 1/4 inch, my edge right here. Not down here. I'm not worrying about here yet. I'm just worrying about where my needle is up here. So, pardon this while I move my foot to the pedal. A smart person would have moved it there to begin with, but here we go. Let's see if I can, how much jiggling I will do. And I probably won't do very much, but you'll get the gist. And as I am moving along, trying to see over the camera, I am going to always be watching this point where the needle is working. I can do a back stitch if I want to, and I'm going to go slowly and just gently turn as I go around. I hope I've got that edge there. It's a little interesting with the camera here. And I'm just going to slowly go around, and I'm going to remove pins as I go. And I'm also, as I go, I take my foot up off the presser, off the pedal, to make sure that I don't hit it and start running while my finger is there. And I just check underneath, and I can kind of feel from the top as well if there's a fold coming on, and there is down there. So I'm going to fix that before I start going around again. And just keep manipulating, sewing slowly. This isn't a race. And just keep going all the way around. One thing I should also mention is that I have my machine set to be in the needle down position, so that whenever I stop, it's going to put the needle down, which is going to hold the fabric as I'm checking underneath or just kind of moving things around, that I'm not going to have that jerk in the middle of it. So if you have a needle down position, I suggest you use that. If you don't, then you can, when you stop, make sure that you just use the hand wheel to put the needle down into the fabric. And one other thing that I can't demonstrate really well here because it would obscure the camera, but sometimes I just let this curl up a little bit, and then that seems to help with doing the circular bit. And just take your time. As I said, this isn't a race. And particularly until you're used to doing these circles, give yourself lots of time to do it accurately. Now this looks a little messy, I'll admit, because we've been manipulating it under the machine, but a good pressing will take care of that. And you can press it either way, but I tend to press it toward the pieced circle, the smaller, well, what's the larger circle now? It looks like the smaller circle. The inside circle, I tend to press toward that. And I'm pressing it, I'm not ironing it. And I probably will, ordinarily I wouldn't press from the back side first, but for this I probably will, just to make sure that I get that all turned under, and then I'm going to turn it and press it here, and then I can work on getting all those wrinkles out of there. But there's a circle. I know it's not pressed yet, but it looks like a circle, right? And it wasn't that difficult to do. Just be patient with yourself, be patient with the circle. I'm going to press this and then I'll show it. The camera would show this as it's really more of a teal, a brighter teal than it's showing. And here we have our finished circle. Let's see, I've got a wrinkle there I could probably work on. Now the beauty of this, of course, is that, as with any circle, whether we applique it or whatever, is that we could create something in here. We could use a print in here if we wanted to. We could piece this. This could be crumb quilt pieces, although that would make it a little harder to get this around. You would want to make sure that the seams were locked at the very edges, because you have to try to get this set around the circle. So the edges, if they're starting to pull apart, are going to be more of a problem to try and get the edges matched up correctly. But I think a fun print in the middle would be really cool. You could splice something through the middle here. You would, in order for the circle to continue to look like a circle, you would have to make sure that everything that you put into the circle, the piece that you splice, equals what you took out of the circle, taking into account the seam allowances on each side. And I talked about that in a video where I did some splicing. We'll see if I can find that and put a link to it down in the description. I think it would be kind of fun to do a nice bold print in there. Another thing you could do would be to make rings so that you do the same thing. Treat this as if it was the base fabric, and then just cut another circle here, a circle to insert that's an inch larger, and then you can make a ring such as I've done here. This was my first one ever that I did, and you can see that, you know, a little practice. This is the second one, and it's much better. And in this case, it might look like these are appliqued on top of this fabric, but in fact, when I did the second, I cut this out, and then I used the same background fabric to put in the center. And I could do that because this background is random, looks random. It isn't random, but it looks random, so that my eye isn't trying to see, oh, well, would that really have followed through there? If this were a stripe, that would be a different story. It might be kind of interesting because you could do the background one way and then have the stripe in the center turned. That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Kind of like that idea. You wouldn't even have to have this in the center. These are centered, but your rings could be uneven so that you shift over a little bit. And so you've got a less symmetrical look if you prefer that. Lots of options with circles. Again, piecing, applique, whatever. I guess one of the main advantages of this is that you've got it finished without having to do any extra work, any handwork or embroidery. You don't have the stabilizer on the back, which admittedly, if you've got tear away or cut away, you can get away most of that, but you'll still have, you know, bits of it that will make it a little stiffer, which may or may not be a problem for whatever you have planned. But this gives you nice clean lines and still that kind of drape and fold that can be easier to work with on some quilts. That is piecing circles, and I hope you, if you have not pieced circles before because you felt a little daunted by it, I hope this has helped you. Don't expect your first one to be perfect. Well, they're never going to be perfect, of course, but it only takes one or two for you to figure out how you can best work at your machine, how to get that accurate 1/4 inch, and just get your own workflow and rhythm going. And it may take you one or two to do that. And if it takes you 3 or 4, that's no problem. That's perfectly fine too. It's, I think, a very useful thing to have, particularly for modern quilts. You'll see lots of circles, and if you're comfortable doing them, or at least willing to do them, you will get better as you go along, and you can do some really fun things with them. Oh, you know, the other thing you could do would be to, sorry, I was about to end this. You could do the piecing on the back here. So say you've got a strip across here, or you're doing crisscrosses. You could do that on here and then insert the circle, or a ring. Ooh. And have crisscrosses here. Oh, so let's say black and white, because me. You could have, say, a white background here with black crisscrosses, and then put in the circle of, say, a bright color. And then on the inside, do the negative of this, so it would be black with white crisscrosses on it. Random crisscrosses. I think that would be fun. We might have to do that sometime, but not today. That's it for today and piecing circles. We have lots of ideas for what we might do with those circles now, and you probably have more. Please share your ideas down in the comments. I always love to read your comments and see what your suggestions are. I do read them all, try to respond to them all. If I don't, it's because I've somehow missed them. I think I've gotten everybody's answered though. That's it for this week. Next week, we might do some more with circles. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we'll think of something. And I hope to see you then. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. Helps other people to find this channel, which I hope you are finding helpful for some ideas of what you might do, or even just to say, no, I'm never going to do that. There's value in that, to narrowing things down. So hope to see you next week. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.